Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Melissa, and if you're new here and you want to learn more about astrology or you're open to learning, please subscribe to my channel. I'm still a very small channel at the moment, so if you like what you hear in my videos, if you learn something, if you find it informative, it would really mean a lot if you could support me by hitting subscribe, hitting the bell for notifications, as well as liking my videos or just leaving a comment letting me know what your feedback is. I'm always open to suggestions. Thank you so much for visiting my channel and clicking my videos. So today we're just going to start off with Venus retrograde, and I'm also going to go through each of the signs and be a little bit more specific about how Venus acts in each sign when it is retrograde. So starting off with the main general idea of Venus retrograde. When a planet goes retrograde, what is really happening? So from Earth, it appears that a planet is moving backwards when the speed of that planet is actually slowing down. So imagine you're in a car, right? And you are driving in your car, and the car next to you, there's a car next to you who is driving the same speed as you, right? So it appears like you're moving at the same time and passing the same environment at the same time. So you would basically be going at the same speed, but let's say the other car decided to slow down and it started going at a slower speed. It seemed like you were passing it, like you were going faster, which is true, but from your perspective, it's gonna look like the car is going backwards. It's actually not going backwards, it's just slowing down. And so that's exactly what's happening with the planets when they go retrograde. Now, the meaning of retrograde in astrology basically means that the general meaning, the essence of that planet is going, it seems to be like regressing. Instead of being used to its full potential, it is sort of held back. Whatever is associated with that planet, people generally review those things. They tend to go back and like be more careful in proceeding with how they deal with those associations. So let's say in the case of Venus, right? So what does Venus stand for? It stands for your self-worth, your sense of beauty, and how you relate to people, your relationships, and your idea of love. So when Venus is retrograde, we tend to, or we're asked to review those things. We need to examine that area of our life more closely, more carefully, and to not be so overly eager or too overly enthusiastic with pursuing those things. So they say that it's not really a good idea to pursue relationships or try to solidify a relationship when Venus is retrograde, just because it's not really a time, like an optimal time to go forward in love, to pursue it with as much energy as we would otherwise. Just because retrograde again is all about like slowing down. The planet is slowing down in real time. So we want to take that area of our life much slower and just be more cautious about it. The associations of that planet may also kind of in a way be like turned on its head and might go in the opposite direction as we want it to. So that's another reason why they say like it's probably not a good idea to pursue relationships or love during Venus retrograde. And in another example with Mercury retrograde, Mercury rules your communication and your short-term contacts, short-term travel. So they say like be careful with traveling during Mercury retrograde. Be careful with signing documents in Mercury retrograde. Be careful in your normal everyday conversations, because you can easily slip and just accidentally text the wrong person or something like that. Communication wise, you need to exercise more caution. Another effect of Venus retrograde, whether by transit or in the natal chart, is the issues surrounding self-worth and what makes a person feel valuable, what makes a person put themselves first and really care for themselves, what makes a person put off treating themselves and really practicing self-care. The self-worth tends to be lower than a Venus direct influence, and it's like it's not fully cultivated. The self-worth is not, there's not enough attention or energy put towards growing the self-worth and realizing the person's own value. If you were born with Venus retrograde, you might not be so willing to spend money on yourself or invest in yourself and like make yourself feel good, whether that means like allowing yourself to buy nice clothes for yourself or allowing yourself to have good food, I don't know, decorate your house or something, you know, whatever it is that makes you feel good or makes you feel comfortable. You really see that you're not worth it. You're not worth it, and that comes from not seeing value in yourself or just being a little slow to realize your own value. How do you know if you have Venus retrograde in your chart? Well, you want to look at, first of all, if you haven't seen your own birth chart yet or you haven't looked it up, please visit the link in the description of all my videos and click on that to obtain your free birth chart. You will need your birth date, birth time, and your birthplace. And once you input all that information and you are faced with your chart, you can find Venus, which is the symbol of the circle with the cross beneath it, and it should have a small r next to it, and that indicates that your Venus is in retrograde and you're born with Venus retrograde. Alright, so going back to Venus retrograde, firstly with transiting Venus retrograde, so Venus as it's moving in real time in the sky, we want to reevaluate what it is that gives us self-worth, what it is that we value, and what we deem as beautiful or ideal or desirable. So we might be going over those values that we have and sort of either changing what isn't working for us, or possibly even purging things or objects that we surround ourselves with that we don't really find attractive or beautiful or desirable anymore. So that's one effect of Venus retrograde. And another thing is kind of like rethinking our relationships and how we are doing our one-on-one relationships, like whether that's a romantic thing or just friendship wise, just how we relate to people in general. We might be reconsidering how it is that we reach out to others, how it is that we connect with them, or how we relate to them. Perhaps we go about things differently in that area. Perhaps we change our approach in how we reach out to others, and instead of going our usual way, or like the way that we are used to relating with others, which is seen through our Venus sign in the natal chart, we might reassess that and we might, change things up a bit. We might be a little bit slower to reach out to others and be more hesitant about how they're going to receive us. Venus is very much concerned with how we are being received, and it cares a lot about what other people think, because it's like on the receiving end, it's all about relationships and how other people are seeing us. With Venus, we want to be seen a certain way. When it goes retrograde, we're going to be really thinking about that and what are the results of us reaching out to somebody. We might perhaps be a little bit more careful or cautious about what we spend our money on, any big investments. If we normally have a shopping addiction, during Venus retrograde, you really want to be careful with that and really think about, because it's going to be a time where we reconsider or reevaluate what we value, what we find beautiful. And so if you're the type of person who usually just goes ham on spending their paycheck and just like whatever they see that they like, they just immediately go and get it and they spend money on it because that reflects your values, during Venus retrograde, you might be more hesitant about spending that money, or just you'll ideally slow down in spending your money in the ways that you normally do, because you're rethinking, or you're asked to rethink what you find beautiful and what you value, what you will invest in. This is also a period where they say that people from your past, people from like past relationships or past flings or whatever, will try to come back into your life, or either they're gonna try to come back into yours, or you'll kind of be like stuck in the past and stuck in your romantic past, and it'll be a time where you're like rethinking what happened with you and that person, and you might be tempted to reach out to them. And sometimes during Venus retrograde, one thing that might be the thing that is holding you back from going forward and pursuing a future relationship is because something from your past is holding you back, and you're rethinking you're going back on your old memories and rethinking, reevaluating what you did wrong or how you used to do your relationships back then. And so the good thing that can come out of Venus retrograde is you're able to learn from your lessons in love and your relationships and like what you did wrong. And so doing that helps you slow down. It helps you be more careful about the future so that you don't go over the same things again and repeat the same mistakes in the future. So during Venus retrograde, what you want to be doing is thinking about that and thinking about how you normally would pursue relationships and just seeing what's really not working with that, and so that your future relationships are so much better. So with Venus retrograde in Aries, whether that is by transit or you have it in your own birth chart, what would happen if Venus is retrograde in Aries? It really would not be comfortable. Aries is all about forward motion, impulsiveness, just falling in love randomly in the blink of an eye. So Venus retrograde, you are not so eager. You are not so quick to put yourself out there and be this bold, brave person in love that your typical Venus in Aries would be. So you might hold back a lot. At some point in your life, you might have felt rejected because of your advances, because you went too far, you pushed too hard, you were like too much for the other person to handle, and so your fire kind of went out of control. So yeah, you're either too scared to pursue or too forward with it, and it's hard for you to find that balance because with the retrograde motion in Venus, it's hard for you to express the qualities of that Venus sign in a healthy or positive way. It's always going to be up to you. The planets do not compel you to do anything. It doesn't spell out your fate or your destiny for you. It's always going to be up to you. These are just some tendencies that you might be faced with in life and some difficulties you might encounter. So it's good to know about, and it's good to know that you can avoid them as well. Yeah, you might have been labeled as too aggressive or too forward or just been put down because of your naturally gregarious nature in relationships and in love. With Venus retrograde in Taurus, you really enjoy the finer things in life. You enjoy all the beautiful things that life and love and the world has to offer, but you can go overboard. You can be a little bit too indulgent. You can be a little lazy and constantly expect for love to come to you or the goods to come to you without you having to put much effort into it. And granted, Venus in Taurus has that magnetic quality to it, and it's comfortable in Taurus because it is able to attract whatever it wants. But with the retrograde motion applied here, it's a little bit too laid back, a little bit too much expectation for things to be easy for you, and you might not be as hardworking in your relationships just because of that. You might be too preoccupied with experiencing the finer things in life and just bringing pleasure to your own senses without it meaning very much. Or also another thing could be you put more importance on quantity over quality. So that is another thing. That's another effect of Venus retrograde in Taurus. Instead of experiencing or collecting things of quality, it's just mostly about the number of things that you have, and you're not so much concerned about whether they're going to serve you in the long run, whether they're really good investments or not. Venus retrograde in Gemini, you have a way with words, right? With talking to your crushes and just forming a really good, building a mental rapport with your relationship partner. But if you have Venus retrograde here in the sign, you might be a little more attuned to gossip, or your social skills might be dampened a little bit. You might not be as chatty or as eloquent as a typical Venus in Gemini would. You might be hesitant to express verbally what you're feeling. You might come across as a know-it-all, as a person who is like trying too hard to show off their intelligence in the hopes that it will attract the person or attract people to you and have them like value you. So instead, your words might have the opposite effect. So instead of appearing charming and just like a person who has a way with words, it might instead come off as insincere or just using flattery for flattery's sake. With Venus in Cancer retrograde, it might be hard for you to come out of your shell in order to properly relate to others. Okay, so Venus in Cancer normally is quite withdrawn already. It takes a while for them to really open up to others and let them experience the warmth. They have a natural inclination to be warm towards others and like have a hospitable and just comforting quality about themselves when they want to attract somebody or when they try to have relationships with others. But with retrograde Venus in Cancer, it's just even more difficult for them to come out of their shell, put enough effort to reach out and like put themselves out there. They're just, I think, 10 times even more shy about pursuing their crush or reaching out and making friends. They can cling too much to their own creature comforts and stay within their safe zone, stay within their level of comfort rather than like going out and taking a risk. They choose to stay, where it feels safe and where it feels comfortable. With Venus in Leo retrograde, the effect here can be that the person can really go over the top with their desires and pursuing their desires. They might appear cocky, so they're really good at selling themselves, right? And like promoting themselves and promoting their talents and what it is they have to offer. They really are good at advertising themselves as a possible potential relationship partner. But with retrograde Venus, it can appear a little bit too over the top and a little too gaudy, I guess too much of a show off, where it rubs the other person the wrong way, and that type of like show offiness might come from a deeper insecurity where they feel like they might have to overcompensate for lacking something, for their own insecurities. And this is definitely like the darker shadow side of Venus in Leo, but the shadow side is what comes out during retrograde. So all of these qualities that might come from having Venus retrograde in a certain sign is because they're the more negative side, because it is the shadow side. That tends to be the result of a planet going retrograde in a certain sign, is we see the more difficult traits of that sign. And another trait of Venus retrograde in Leo could be that their standards for selecting a partner, the expectations could be like really, really high that they set on the potential partner, just because they might see themselves as very much like the highest prize that you could ever have. So with that being said, they might not just give anybody a chance, so it'll be really hard to please them, basically, just because they hold themselves in like that highest regard. And it might stem from that insecurity that I mentioned earlier. Their generosity and their like open-heartedness it won't flourish as much here with retrograde. Instead of them being like this open-hearted, generous, like solar energy that warms everybody and is just open and giving and warm to everyone, it can have the effect of being like too hot, like too scorching for everybody else. Now with Venus retrograde in Virgo, the perfectionism here can be just over the top. They will put themselves last in everything. They will not give themselves a chance. Where Venus and Leo won't give other people any chances because they put themselves in such high regard. Venus retrograde in Virgo can be the opposite. So they might not feel worthy of anybody's love. They might not feel good enough to impress anybody. Regular Venus in Virgo, they have like their own list of standards, right? And their own like checklist of qualities that a partner needs to have. With retrograde, they're going to be having like a checklist for themselves. So like saying, I'm not good enough, I'm not this, and why would anybody really want me? And it's just like nothing is ever good enough for them to really relax and be their sensual selves and just give the best that they can to a potential partner. And so it's like they end up not pursuing at all. It's kind of withdrawing and forever trying to perfect themselves, reach this impossible level of perfection. Now with Venus retrograde in Libra, these people might suffer from indecision with who it is that they want to partner with, and just indecision in general with relating to people. That can mean indecision with what to do with a certain person, like whether to continue seeing them or not. It can be indecision on how they want to be perceived as far as like their own self-worth. They can be indecisive about the things that make them feel beautiful, things that make them feel good, and that serve as markers of their own beauty and self-worth. This position can also be a little bit more on the shallow side, a little more on the superficial, just because Venus in Libra retrograde will not be so much more concerned about the quality of the relationships, but more so about how the relationship will make themselves look good or appear good, how the partner will elevate their status or just make them appear a certain way. It might be like that's mostly what they care about, is just appearances and making things appear good and great and awesome on the surface, where in reality their relationships or their own self-worth might not be as great as they describe it, as ideal as they would like them to be. With Venus retrograde in Scorpio, the person can be more vindictive than usual. They might be like endlessly testing their partners. They definitely do not trust easily, and once mistakes are made, it's hard for the Venus and Scorpio person to be forgiving and just be willing to give second chances, be willing to like accept that people make mistakes, and they're just 10 times less trusting than Venus retrograde direct. It's also really hard for Venus and Scorpio retrograde to really relax and let themselves feel good, allow themselves to feel pleasure, to feel at ease with a partner, or at ease even within themselves as far as their self-worth, because for them they can kind of blow out of proportion the idea, the concept that they have of that love needs to be suffering, love is torture. They can really take that to the extremes and just really play that out within their relationships and really like put their partners to that test. Now with Venus retrograde in Sagittarius, the person can come off as a little bit preachy and sort of like a know-it-all, like as though they've had so many experiences and be sort of like a show-off about all that they've experienced in life and all the knowledge that they've gained from all the corners of the world. Can be a little too preachy about their own ideals in love, and they can be a little too idealistic when it comes to their partners and when it comes to themselves. This is the sign ruled by Jupiter, which is all about like expansion and an overblown like belief in the self. So this can come off as cockiness, it can come off as just like unrealistic faith in themselves, and they can appear a little too innocent and a little too naive in love, in their relationships, and just I think seeing too much of the good in people, or just like seeing what they want to see in people and not really like facing their bad sides. And so as a result, they can take unnecessary risks in love, and you can have like a carelessness about how they approach people and how they approach their relationships. It's just things are still left not taken care of. Like they might have a problem in their relationships and not really tie up the loose ends. They just kind of like leave them as it is, and it can have this sort of like sloppy, careless quality about it, about how they handle their relationships. With Venus in Capricorn retrograde, the person can seem overly rigid and a little too cold and closed off, and this might have to do with their own self-worth. All Venus in retrograde positions will have to do with your self-worth, so and the kinds of issues that surround that. So with Venus in Capricorn retrograde, the self-worth might be, the person might test their own self-worth just constantly and not really give themselves a break. They might not really see that they are worth it. They might not see that love is an investment, that love and relationships require some sort of like tenderness, and they don't really see that relationships should be good and fun. And they can really, Venus in Capricorn retrograde can really take that idea too far of the idea that it needs to be hard work, it needs to be hard, it needs to like be put through the fire and be tested constantly. So this person might be come off as a bit overly pessimistic and not really giving much of a chance to other people to warm up to other people. And Venus in Capricorn normally, like Venus in Capricorn direct, they're kind of like this hard glacier that you need to melt. You need to melt their heart in order to really see their soft side, see their vulnerable side. And with retrograde influence here, it's going to be even harder to impress them and harder to melt their hearts, to really get through to them, and it's hard for them to trust, really. With Venus retrograde in Aquarius, the person might not feel as though they are seen as an individual. They might not feel unique, they might not feel special, and within themselves, their own self-worth, their own self-value, they might reject their own uniqueness, and they might not see that as valuable. They might not see that as a point of self-worth where it is a quality that endears other people to them, or it endears them to other people. They don't really see that as important, their own uniqueness. They might have strange desires or like strange tastes. They might prefer a certain type of person or a certain type of relationships where other people will see that and won't really understand it. And so Venus in Aquarius retrograde can often feel misunderstood. The way that they handle their own relationships is strange or unorthodox, and it's something that makes them stand out, and it might be the source of insecurity for them. With Venus retrograde in Pisces, the person may struggle with low self-worth, and they're constantly at or to a fault, like putting other people constantly before themselves and really not seeing where they fit in. They're not seeing where other people end and where they themselves begin. So it's hard for them to like extract themselves from the world and instead choose to put themselves first. So Venus in Pisces has a tendency to show love to the universe and like really see and recognize that universal love. It's like they don't really recognize that they themselves are part of that too. They themselves are part of the universe, and so that means that they're also worthy and needing of love. So they might just pour so much of themselves and pour all of their love that they have to everybody else without really saving any for themselves. And there's this sacrificial quality to Venus in Pisces, but when it's retrograde, that sacrifice may just come at a price, and that is the price of losing themselves and being a victim, feeling like a victim. Their relationships with others is put so much at the forefront of their lives as a priority over anything else that they forget about loving themselves, and they can forget about who they are and what it is that makes them feel valuable and makes them feel worthy of love, of accepting or even desiring love. It's like, what makes me so special, or what makes me so special that I deserve to desire something for myself. It's almost like there is no ego, there are no desires for the self, for pleasing the self. So what can you do to help yourself or just improve your own self-worth, improve your relationships if you're born with Venus retrograde in these signs? If you're born with this position natally, what you want to do is really sit and think about, what do you want?
What do you want? What do you want?
It's not that simple.
What do you want?
What makes you feel good, and what do you really desire? And it's not wrong to want those things. It's not wrong to allow yourself to experience good things in life and treat yourself sometimes. It is a form of self-love, and loving yourself is not wrong, and it's not egotistical. It doesn't make you a bad person, and you're not wrong for loving yourself or investing in yourself. What does that mean to you? What is investing in yourself? And that answer is going to depend on each person and what your experiences are and what you've been through in the past, your memories, and like knowing what, I guess, also having an idea of what you don't want in order to know what you do want. So focus more on that and put in more effort and energy into surrounding yourself with things that really give you joy and make you feel comfortable and give you pleasure. Just remember that you're not wrong for having desires, and you're always worth it. You are always going to be worth it, because in the end, you should be your own best friend. As much as cheesy as that sounds, as even if you have many friends to surround yourself with anyway, in the end, all you really have is yourself. Okay, so you might as well be on your own best side as much as possible, and like win yourself over, like date yourself, literally just try to impress yourself. Why are we trying to why are we expecting others to try to impress us when we can't even impress ourselves and get on our own good sides? Like, that's also super important. If we don't like it when other people don't pay attention to us or give us or like build our self-worth and make us feel valuable, why don't we do that for ourselves? And why don't we see our own value and treat ourselves as valuable human beings? During the transits of Venus retrograde, this is the time where us people with Venus retrograde natally in our charts, it doesn't really affect us so much, because we live like that every day of our lives, even without the transit. So we already know what it feels like to slow down and to rethink our own self-worth and our own sense of value and how we do our relationships. So it can be a period where it's actually a lot easier for us, where you might even thrive during Venus retrograde times, which is good for us. At least we are allowed a break throughout the year. If at any other time of the year we're like so hard on ourselves and like denying our own pleasures and our own, like denying ourselves the extra piece of cake or whatever, like Venus retrograde allows us a time to feel relaxed enough to give into that and experience our own indulgences. So let me know in the comments, what do you do as a Venus retrograde person? How do you deal with that? How do you face that? If you have any advice for dealing with that you can share with other people who also have this placement, Venus retrograde, then please let us all know, so we can, help each other and just learn to have more self-love, I guess. As always, please remember to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't for more astrology content, and I'll see you soon.